All right, welcome back to Defying Gravity Podcast with Zach Goodman. Today, I am going to give you a vertical jump kind of program outline or progression that we had from this past month. I shared on social media that at least one of our kids, he had a 9-inch increase to his vertical jump. He went from into the 21s into the 30s, and this was from September 2nd to September 30th. So basically a month, maybe a little under a month that we had throughout this training cycle. There was a lot of coaches that reached out saying, "Hey, will you talk about what you guys did? Will you share like the training cycle?" And I put on X that I would talk about the training cycle, what exactly we did, and how this athlete was able to make such good progress. He was not the only athlete that had really, really big improvements over the last, really month of September. Um, we had a lot of athletes, at least a few that I can think of just within that class that have went up, 6 to 8 inches on their vertical. Um, I think my biggest improvement for the month was a kid that went from about 15.5 into like the 25s, like within this month, a kid that just started training with me, a wrestler that went up like 10 inches on his vertical jump. And of course, everything else kind of went up too. So yeah, that's kind of here what we're talking about today. Okay. Um, so we train 4 times a week. If you listen to the podcast, you know that we train an upper lower split. We're training the upper body Mondays and Thursdays. We pair that with our sprint work, and then we're training our lower body Tuesdays and Fridays, and we pair that with our jump work. That's kind of the general outline of what we follow all year round. That doesn't really change at all. Okay, so we train 4 times a week, and this athlete, we're going to cover just the lower body training. Um, we can talk about sprinting. We recently got a shred mill this past summer, so I can kind of break down what we're doing with that. We've seen some really, really good sprint PRs. This particular kid I'm going to overview his training today. He gained 3 miles an hour to his 20-yard dash. So he went up not across a 40 or a fly. He went up 3 miles per hour on a 20-yard dash. So from 0 to 20, he added 3 miles an hour to that. Our goal is to try to get his 60-yard down as he's a baseball kid and he's going to do all the testing and stuff at PBR. So he had some pretty outstanding sprint progress as well, along with all of his other stuff. So if you guys want me to talk about the shred mill and talk about what we're doing with that, I can. So lower body training twice a week. Okay, we train Tuesdays and Fridays with the lower body. So I'm going to kind of outline what we did. Okay, we always start every lower body workout with loaded jumps. Okay, this particular training cycle we start with our dumbbell jumps. That's pretty typical for us. We always start with our dumbbell jumps first. That's kind of like the way I like to structure. I like to jump and then squat. So we'll do this particular wave. We did 4 max effort dumbbell jumps. We've been experimenting with upwards of 8 to 10, but with time purposes, with the first month of school kind of underway, to make sure that kids are not only getting their training done, but they are kind of getting it done in an efficient manner. We had to peel back the volume a little bit with the dumbbell jumps from what we were using, about 8 to 10 dumbbell jumps over the summer, to about 4. But this particular athlete did not do any 8 to 10 dumbbell jumps. He was using 4 the whole time because he really just started working with me. Um, so we did 4 max ever dumbbell jumps. This particular athlete already has a training history. He's already relatively strong. Not extremely strong, but already has some muscle mass, has already lifted some weights, is a pretty active kid. He's a junior in high school now. A pretty solid athlete, not a freak or anything, just a solid kid that, has hit some weights and done a little bit of bodybuilding type workouts. So he already had some prerequisite muscle. So he did 4. We started the workouts with 4 dumbbell jumps. Okay, these are max effort on the OVR. I'm wearing my OVR shirt, not sponsored or anything, but I like their products. We use their products almost every single day. So big fan of them. So shout out to them and Michael Fahey, who's one of their co-founders. Okay. So we did our 4 dumbbell jumps on the OVR jump. So every single day we come in for lower body, he would follow 30, 35, 40 waves. So that means on week 1 of the wave, he did 30-pound dumbbells in each hand. He would take 4 dumbbell jumps. He would track every jump that he did. The next week he did 35, next week 40. So a 3-week pendulum wave with the dumbbells. That was based off of his box squat. This particular kid he's gained about 60-ish pounds to his box squat, maybe a little bit more. So he actually started with like the 20s. But then we kind of progressed him pretty much right away to the 30s because I realized, oh, this kid has a lot of juice to squeeze on the strength. So I just bumped him right to the 30, 35, 40 wave, kind of right off the rip. And with his box squats, particularly, like we had to do a little bit of technique work. Like we had to really focus on him unloading the hips and pausing in the bottom. He's never really done that style of squatting before, so that was something we kind of had to work. But dumbbell jumps 30, 35, 40, about 30 to 60 seconds between, and we track that twice a week, every single week. So he's getting dumbbell jump frequency 2 times a week, about 4 max effort dumbbell jumps, all tracked, and again trying to PR those every time. After our dumbbell vertical jumps, we went right into unloaded vertical jumps, so just basic vertical jumps on the OVR. We did about 6 on average. If it was a good jump day and kids were really, hitting PRs, sometimes I just let them keep jumping just to see what happens. This particular kid was hitting PRs basically every session, or pretty dang close. Like I said, we went up 9 inches on his vertical jump, and there were some kids that I had a kid go up 10 inches on a vertical jump this past month. But I have, it's pretty typical when kids first start training to add about 4 to 6 inches of their vertical jump, like right off the rip. Or if they're coming in from like an in season where they don't train very frequently, they usually can put on about 4 to 6 inches that first month. Then after that, as they become more trained, we're looking at about an inch, inch and a half, 2 inches a month, pretty much going forward every month. And again, that will determine if a kid's gaining body weight, that might slow. If a kid's not gaining body weight, that will speed up. So again, it just kind of cycles throughout the year, kind of works out every year. Um, so vertical jumps, we did about 6 max effort, all in the OVR jump. Same thing, 30, 60 seconds between each of his jumps. Um, he was able to, PR those most days. And then we went into our strength. So we would do dumbbell jumps, vertical jumps. Then we go right into our strength. We did box squats into foam. We're using a 12-inch box, 6-inch foam pad. If you want that pad that I use, I don't buy it off FTS. I get them off Amazon. They're much cheaper. We have them for all of our kids for every rack. If you want that, either go on my X and like search it, or message me and I can send you the link to that. But I've a lot of coaches have asked me about that. I've sent it to every single person who's texted me or messaged me about it. Okay. So those foam pads are available on Amazon. They're just a really like cushiony, like very soft foam pad. So they sink right into that 12-inch box. It's really awesome. Um, if I might do a podcast on why we kind of changed to the soft pad. The short answer is it's cued kids to push their feet more. They really can't hinge when they have that soft pad. Secondarily, it's allowed them to recover a bit faster, so they're able to squat heavier more frequently, and that's really helped us. Especially because kids that are young that really don't know how to push through their feet yet typically want to hinge all their squats. So that's kind of helped me out quite a bit. But box squat into foam, we follow our brief maximal tension wave. This is a very typical one for us. We went 5-4-5-3-4-2. Okay. And again, that was per session. So again, in like 3x5, and then do a 3x4, add load, then back to a 3x5, keep load the same, add a rep, then the triples, add more load. Then the fours, keep load the same, add a rep. My buddy Michael Fahey, he did an outline in X. I think I commented on it, basically outlining kind of like how I set up the what we talk about on this podcast, how I set up a 3-week wave. On my bench manual, I have a bunch of example waves that we'll use. The one that he I think outlined was like I think it was a 6-4-5-3-4-2. Um, that's a pretty good one that I use, but this one went 5-4-5-3-4-2. Um, that's kind of what he followed with this particular athlete. After box squats, again, his box squat went up like 60 pounds over the last 3-ish weeks of training. So his box squat really flew. It was awesome. And that's why his vertical jumps also flew. His relative strength rose pretty quickly. Barbell RDLs, we did those afterwards. So we would squat, we jumped, we squatted, we did our barbell RDL. We always do a heavy hinge after we squat. We did high box step ups. This is something new that I haven't had the kids do yet. So I've really been experimenting with high box step ups. And what I mean by high box is instead of stepping up in like a 12-inch or a 16-inch box, kids are stepping up in like 18 to 24-inch boxes. And what that allows, if you look at the knee, it allows deep knee flexion, kind of a unilateral deep knee flexion type movement. It's a little bit different than anything else we've done. So you're also overcoming accommodation. It's just a different stimulus. And so we did a lot of high box step ups this really the last like 6 weeks or so. This athlete used a 24-inch box just based off his height. So when he steps up, he's getting really deep knee flexion to step up with weight, and that's been awesome. I also noticed this really trained the heck out of like the hip flexors and all those muscles that are really into that pushing, that acceleration phase. And it's a pretty low stress movement as far as the low back goes. So you can train these pretty hard and not feel super fatigued afterwards. So I like these as an accessory movement. And then we wrapped up with ATP march. We followed a 45, 45, 60 wave. So kids would march with heavier weights for 45 seconds, try to increase load the second week. And then the third week, we bumped it up to 60 seconds. I'm not a huge fan of like the, 2 minute, 3 minute marches. I know some people use like the really long duration marches. I'm more of a fan of stacking heavier load marches for shorter periods of time. And that's just what I prefer. And that's kind of what I've seen kids are more consistent with. And they kind of push them a bit harder, especially with the load if they know they're not going to be in the ATP for 2 or 3 minutes. So that was session one. Jump, spot squat, heavy hinge, high box step ups, march. Okay. We did that every Tuesday. Okay, our lower two, we did dumbbell vertical jumps and vertical jumps again. So we're repeating, we're jumping twice a week, max effort, exact same way as we did Tuesday, but we do this on a Friday. Box squat into foam. Again, we're following the brief maximal tension method and the waves that I kind of have set up. So again, this if we squatted for the particular first week was a set of five, sets of five on Tuesday. Friday would be sets of four. We increase load. Okay, we're using an undulating kind of periodization model where we're changing schemes, we're changing volumes and intensities daily, and it kind of looks just again kind of like an undulating periodization scheme. We're not just starting with high reps and going down to low reps. We are undulating every week. Okay. And again, on my bench manual that I put out in the summertime, that outlines everything on there. So if you want to look at that, feel free to hit me up. And that is available. So box squats, rack pulls. This is something that we've been pushing quite a bit the last like 9 weeks of training. I love rack pulls so much. We do these out of the mid shin. So we have straps in our racks. We don't have the pin. We have pins on the other side, but we have the Sornex racks that have straps. So we'll set the strap to about the middle of your shin. And I love rack pulls for our athletes. I feel like it allows a lot of our kids to start hinging really heavy really quickly because they're pulling out of, right off of a strap. I feel like it also allows you to accumulate a bit more reps pulling out of the rack. Plus, it puts you in not an advantageous position for most kids. Most kids really like, that middle of your shin is a pain in the ass for a lot of lifters and athletes to kind of overcome. That first initial pull off the floor, you get some momentum acceleration from the bar. You can kind of outrun that shin to knee when you put the bar right in the middle of your shin, you can't really outrun it from the floor. So it really builds the hell out of the posterior chain. So big fan of that. We followed a 5-5-3 wave. So we did some sets of five, week one, sets of five in week two. We did this once a week and then triples in the last week. Okay. I like rack pulls typically for reps. I've done them up to 8 reps. I've done them down to 1 rep. For my athletes, especially because we squat so heavy, I prefer them to use it more of as an accessory supplemental lift than more of like a max effort type lift. And that's just what we do. Front foot elevated split squats after the rack pulls. We used to do front foot elevated split squats off a 12-inch box. I lowered that height to a 45 pound bumper plate, which is about 3 to 4 inches off the ground. So they'll slightly elevate the front foot and they use a 45-pound bumper and they do split squats. And what I'm looking for there is I'm looking for that knee to go over the toe. I'm really looking for like really deep flexion. I'm looking for their hip flexors to work really hard to be them basically fully extended. Is what I'm looking for on the front foot elevated split squat, and those are awesome. So we did those, and then we finished up Fridays. We're going with reverse hypers to traction the spine. Okay. So that's kind of the outline of what we did for those two lower body workouts. Again, we are jumping twice a week. We are heavy squatting twice a week. We are heavy hinging twice a week. We are getting some unilateral stuff, and then we are getting traction and we are addressing the foot and ankle. We do additional foot and ankle and like short ground contact plyos and things on our upper body days before we sprint. This is just kind of covering the vertical jump progression. Again, if you guys want me to outline what we did for the sprints and upper body stuff, I can do that. But this is really what drove this kid's jump up. Okay, we got him stronger on productive exercises. Okay, we were able to add a lot of load and a lot of strength to those, increase his amount of strength. He jumped very frequently, probably more frequently than he's ever jumped in his life, and we disrupted the combination through loaded jumps. Okay, using the dumbbell jump wave on the OVR. So this kid was able to track every single jump he did, get feedback on every jump he did, and be very intentional about pushing those numbers up. And that's really the recipe to drive the jumps is that you need to be very intentional. You need to jump frequent and intense. And then you need to squat frequent and intense. The volume doesn't have to be crazy, but you have to hit frequent, intense exposures if you want to drive those numbers up pretty quickly. Okay. This kid's he's in an off season right now, but he's still playing baseball and doing baseball stuff. So it's not like he's completely away from everything else, but he's not in like the middle of a hard grinding season. So that helped out him quite a bit to drive those verticals up. Conversely, the kid that added 10 inches of vertical, he's in like wrestling season. Like he's traveling. He just wrestled a tournament this last week. Luckily for him, he's not cutting any weight, so we haven't been able to like worry about any of that as far as his numbers go. Like he has a lot of energy. He's actually gained. He went from 177 to 197 in literally like a month. Like he gained that much weight. He's never really lifted weights before in his life. Literally gained like 20 pounds. I think he said he was 197 at his peak, and then like he, was really 192, but 177 to like 192-ish most days. He was 197 going into a meet, and he cut a little bit of water off and weighed in 190 and wrestled in a meet, and I think Tennessee or something like that. Anyways, though, had great progress, followed the exact same progression, different loads, obviously, because different athletes, but the same like kind of exercise scheme, sequence, training session setup, all the same thing. Had tons. I've had athletes that have trained me for a while, hit 3, 4 inches PRs this training wave. So it's just been really productive for all of our kids. And again, not every kid's going to level up or PR at the same rate, but you're going to see predictability. If systems work, they repeat over and over again. Every kid gets results, every kid improves. Again, the only thing that kind of holds them back is like how much they sleep, how much they eat, their genetics, and then their stress outside of the training sessions. But again, all you can ask for in a training session or all you can ask for in a training wave is, does every kid that applies effort consistently see improvement? If that's happening, your training is solid. Not every kid's going to add 6+ inches to their vertical jump. But again, this is a very clear outline of I had like 10 athletes add more than 6 inches to the vertical jump in literally this month of training. So if there was any productive training wave, this is what I can give you. This is exactly what we did. Um, our training wave changes next week. So we are changing some exercises out. We're changing out some main lifts. We're changing out some accessories. So we will see how the training continues to progress, but I'm pretty happy with that first month of school, kind of where we're at, where we're going. Hopefully a lot more kids adding into the 30s, hopefully more kids adding into that 35s, and hopefully we can get some athletes into the 40-inch club on the OVR. Hitting 40 inches on the OVR is like a 45 or something on a typical system. So it's been fun because it's been challenging, right? And it also kind of reminds me is like when that bar is set, like kids think it's 40, but really like on another jump system, it might be like a 44, 45-inch vertical. It just makes me feel like like when our kids go away and we go to combine and stuff, we out jump everybody. Like I sent some kids over the summer to a few schools that were using jump mats still. And they were sophomores, and out jumped everybody that had the highest jumps for their class, highest jump in their position groups, highest jumps there. So again, I like training on a system that's a little bit lower because when kids go away, they're going to hit huge PRs. It's awesome. So no, the everything's been awesome. I'm trying to get more of these podcast things out. It's just I post so much on Twitter. I just need to start turning in some of that content that I put on there just in the podcast form and putting out. But if you have any questions, let me know. That's been it for this training. Hopefully you got something out of this. Hopefully you kind of see what we're doing. Again, if you need clarification of things, message me, text me. You have my number. I'm more than happy to kind of overview some of the things we're doing. And again, if you want access to my athletes training, Train Heroic, I offer literally full access to everything we do every single week all year round on there. So I have coaches, I have athletes on there, I have parents that have kids that pay for that. And again, it's not customizable to you, but it's exactly what my kids are doing. So there's people who will follow it verbatim. There's people who will take certain things, take the dumbbell jump waves, take the box squat waves, and they'll use it for their own training. So that's available. And if you want customized training, it's also available through Train Heroic. Message me. I'll have you fill out a form and we will dial in your training for your specific situation. Okay. So both those things are available if you are interested in kind of learning more, doing more with the system that I'm using for my kids. Okay. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate it. Okay. I am out of here.